All right, this video is going to focus on demonstrating the single target and area effect rotations for the Bloodhound build for the Rogue. I'm not going to spend much time talking about the build itself. That's documented elsewhere, but I will pull up the soul tree quickly. Feel free to freeze the video at this point if you want to compare your build to what I have here. All right, so let's go through the skills for the single target rotation. They're going to be my first, second, third, and fourth button on my main bar, and then it'll also be the third and fourth button on my second bar. So let's go through them one at a time. So Dusk Strike is going to put a buff on us that's going to increase the damage of a finisher by 40%, and this can stack up to 5 times. So if I use Dusk Strike 5 times, 5 times 40% gives me 200% more damage on my finisher. All right, second skill is Barbed Shot, and the main thing we're taking away from this is, it does a dot and does some damage, but the main thing is we want the 10% additional marksman damage that this gives us. All right, and we have Calculated Shot. This gives us a buff called Targeting Telemetry, and this causes channels to tick twice as often and do 20% more damage. It turns out our finisher is a channel, so this will make it basically make the finisher do twice as much damage per second. And then here's the finisher. And of course, you always want to have 5 combo points when you use a finisher, but with this rotation, you will always have 5 combo points at least, or you'll have 5 because Dusk Strike gives you a combo point each time you use it. All right, then let's talk about the second bar. So we got my second bar has the buffs which are off global cooldown. So these are not using a global cooldown cycle. And first one is Hellfire Blades. It adds damage to each attack. It also affects surrounding enemies, and we'll talk about that a little later. And then Bullseye is the last one, and it is going to increase our crit chance by 25%. So you can see the whole idea of this rotation is we're going to use all 5 of these skills are going to buff us so that our finisher does much more damage. So let's see what this looks like. I've made some K alerts to kind of demonstrate what's happening since you can't see me pressing buttons. I don't think you need to have all of these alerts in practice. I do use the alert for Dusk Strike, and I also show an alert for Calculated Shot when I'm actually playing. The Dusk Strike, I use it to keep track of how many stacks I have, because sometimes what I'm doing gets interrupted and I want to know, how far did it get. And I show Calculated Shot. Well, we'll talk about why I show Calculated Shot a little later. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hit Dusk Strike, and you'll see my alert shows me the remaining duration of the buff, and it shows me I have 1 stack. I'm going to press it again, and now I have 2 stacks. It refreshes the duration. So let's take that to 5 stacks. And then I'm going to press Barbed Shot, and then Calculated Shot. Calculated Shot gives me Targeting Telemetry and Hellfire Blades, and then I'm going to hit Rapid Fire Shot and Bullseye. Bullseye, of course, comes first because it's going to buff Rapid Fire Shot. Now, I actually did that rotation only using 4 buttons, and I'll show you some simple macros that'll help you do that. So the reason I've arranged the buttons this way is because my Hellfire Blades is actually in the Calculated Shot macro. So you can see it fires first and then Calculated Shot. Since Hellfire Blades is off global cooldown, all I have to do is hit my number 3 button twice quickly in succession. okay, and it'll fire both skills. Similarly, I've got a simple macro for rapid fire shot, which includes bullseye. Again, bullseye is off global cooldown, so I can simply hit the 4 key twice in quick succession, and it'll fire both skills. And I'm just going to make a comment on Reliquary of Rage. You can put Reliquary of Rage in here somewhere. I like to control its use manually, so I don't actually have Reliquary of Rage in a macro anywhere. Okay, so that's the that's the basic rotation for single target. We can add another twist because the duration of barbed shot and calculated shot is 15 seconds. And that is just long enough that when I come back for the second rotation, I don't need to hit these skills again. The buffs are still up. Okay. So what I do in the second rotation is I hit Dusk Strike 5 times again, because it's going to be consumed by the finisher. And then I want to jump straight to Rapid Fire Shot, right? Because all my buffs are still up. But I can't because Rapid Fire Shot will still be on cooldown, right? And so we introduce one more skill, and it's my 5 button, and it's Empyrean Bolt. So this, what this skill does is it reduces the cooldown of any non-tactician skill. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to reduce the cooldown of Rapid Fire Shot. So second rotation again, 5 Dust Strikes, hit Empyrean Bolt, and then hit Rapid Fire Shot. All right, so what we're, and in effect what we're doing is we're saving 1 global cooldown because I took out 2 skills and replaced it with 1, right? And the idea is I want to fire Rapid Fire Shot as often as I can because that's where all my damage comes from. Okay, so let's see what that looks like. So I'm going to build up Dusk Strike again. Building up Dusk Strike for the second time, and now RFS is ready. I didn't do it quite fast enough there, but if you do it as quickly as it can be done, your barbed shot and calculated shot buffs will last just barely long enough to affect Rapid Fire Shot the second time. So that's the second rotation. After that, you just go back to the first rotation because these buffs from barbed shot and calculated shot are down. So you just go through the entire first rotation again, and then you keep alternating, right? You come back and do 1 rotation with Empyrean Bolt, and then you come back and do another rotation with barbed shot and calculated shot, and you just alternate back and forth. All right, so that's a single target rotation. The area effect rotation is actually simpler. It's going to be these 4 buttons right here starting on my 4th row with calculated shot again. So remember that's giving us targeting telemetry. Causes channels to tick twice as often. Well, it turns out my area effect spell is also a channel. Then we have Hellfire Blades, which we already talked about. But now we're going to get even more benefit from Hellfire Blades because of the collateral damage. So in this grouping of dummies, if I target the center dummy and I hit it once with Hellfire Blades active, I'm going to do collateral damage to all the other dummies, the other 7. But when I throw an AoE at this group, I'm hitting all 8 of the dummies. And each dummy that gets hit does collateral damage to the other 7 dummies. Okay? So every time my AoE ticks, each one of these dummies is getting hit 8 times. So each dummy would be hit by the AoE attack itself, and it would also be hit by each of its 7 neighbors. So that's 8 total strikes on each dummy. and that's going to occur on every tick of the AoE attack, the Necrotic Torrent. So basically that is the whole strategy here, is to use Hellfire Blades to its best advantage, and that's where all your damage comes from. Of course, we're going to use Bullseye also, increase the crit chance, and then here's Necrotic Torrent. So it's a channel, 3-second channel, and it also does more damage when the enemy is below 30% health. And the last line is real important. So it reduces the energy by 1 for every second of the channel. So every tick reduces energy by 1. Now, so that brings us to, well, let me show you the macro. So you can, again, macros are completely optional. They do limit what you can do. So every time you macro skills together, you're losing flexibility. So I don't recommend you use a macro, but if you did, you could put Calculated Shot together with Hellfire Blades, Bullseye, and Necrotic Torrent. If this is what your macro looks like, you would just hit this macro to start an AoE. You would hit it 4 times rapidly. Okay, that will cast Calculated Shot, and Hellfire Blades and Bullseye are off cooldown, off global cooldown, so they would go off immediately, and then your 4th strike would launch Necrotic Torrent. Once Necrotic Torrent counts down its 3-second channel, you would hit this button again, and the first 3 skills would not be available, so it would go straight to the torrent. Anyway, lots of ways to do macros. It's really up to your personal preference. Okay, so let's just demonstrate what that looks like. You're going to see a new alert pop up around this part of the screen, upper left. It looks like a warning symbol for radiation, and we'll just put it up there real quick. So here's the K alert. The one in the middle tells me I've got 1 stack of a debuff, and this counter here is telling me how long this debuff is going to last. Hit it again to refresh it. It's kind of hard to catch the debuffs to read them, but I'll just explain what this debuff does. So this debuff makes Necrotic Torrent reduce energy by an extra point for each stack. So when you have 1 stack, Necrotic Torrent is costing 1 more energy for each tick. Okay? So if you have 2 stacks, Necrotic Torrent is using 2 extra energy points per tick. And that debuff goes to a maximum of 10 stacks. Now, you don't want to get to 10 stacks, but let's go ahead and see what this looks like. So I'm just going to go through the AoE rotation for now, and we'll watch that debuff and also pay attention to my energy bar, which is the purple line here on my portrait. All right, so getting Necrotic Torrent going. There's my 2nd stack. And there's my 5 stacks. Now I'm going to keep hitting Necrotic Torrent and watch my energy bar. Okay, it's about to go to 0. So now it's taking so much energy that it's actually clipping because my energy goes to 0. So basically we have to stop hitting Torrent, okay, at some point. And the question is, what do we do while we're not using Torrent? Because we need to wait for those stacks to the debuff to completely drop before we start using Torrent again. Otherwise it'll just refresh the debuff back to 15 seconds. So the answer is, the best thing you can do for DPS when you're not doing the AoE rotation is to do your single target rotation. It's pretty simple. So that's what we're going to do. And then the question is, well, how many times are we going to hit torrent? How many stacks are we going to allow to accumulate before we stop using torrent? And I'm going to recommend 5. So the way that's balanced is against Hellfire Blades. So we're going to do this again, and you're going to notice that when I have 5 stacks of Necrotic Torrent, Hellfire Blades has dropped. Okay. And so hitting torrent a 6th time is not going to be carrying Hellfire Blades with it. And so it's really doing much less damage at that point. So what we want to do is get rid of the stacks as quickly as we can, and then come back and use Necrotic Torrent again with Hellfire Blades. Okay. What you'll see is if we generate 5 stacks of Torrent Overload, the debuff, and then we do our single target rotation, by the time we finish our single target rotation, Hellfire Blades will be available again. All right, and all 5 stacks will be gone, or the debuff will be gone, and so we can come back and do our AoE rotation again, build 5 stacks of Torrent Overload, and then come back and do the single target rotation once and repeat. Okay, so let's go ahead and try that. So we're going to build up 5 stacks of this with Torrent. You can see Hellfire Blades is still there, and now it's dropping. I did that a little slow. Okay, now I'm going to go into my single target rotation. And you can see Hellfire Blades is available, becomes available during rapid fire shot. So now I go back to my AoE and I have Hellfire Blades available. So what's happening here is Hellfire Blades is always firing during the Necrotic Torrent. That's exactly what you want. And so the timing works out that one rotation of the single target is sufficient to make Hellfire Blades available again. And something is a little weird here with the, seems like I have a little lag, so I'm not doing that single target fast enough. But here we go again with AoE, and you just notice first thing happened is the Hellfire Blades came up. All right, so hopefully that makes sense, and hopefully that helps you out. That's all I have for today. Thanks for watching.